Back at it, back at it, back at it. It's your boy Ghetto. Kamala no Black Part 2. Kamala no Black Part 2. Let's get into this. And after we prove this, guys, can we get to actual policy? Y'all need to hurry up and get over this so we can start organizing around policies for whoever we decide to put in office. But anyway, let's get back to the shenanigans. Kamala no Black Part 2.
I guess the nurses didn't want to ask him what his ethnic origin was. My father was quite light-skinned. In 1969, I went to New York. So in my visit, people ask me anything, and when I speak, they say, "You can see I come from Ireland." Every talk I talk, they say I come from Ireland, and I resemble them in the everything. So that's the reason why we are here in Montserrat as island people.
When they asked you, did you come from Ireland, what did you say?
I say, sure. My
Sure, I come from Ireland.
And my father were quite light-skinned.
Mm.
And in fact, my grandfather had blue eyes and straight hair. Because one of my uncles, my daughter and I had such a joke. One of my uncles, who died about 5 years ago in Ohio in the United States, when he was admitted to the hospital, I guess the nurses didn't want to ask him
fair use. They
just put him down as white. And we had such a joke when he went into the hospital, and they give you this form to be filled out. Ireland. Every talk I talk, they say I come from Ireland. And I resemble. And we had such a joke when we went into the hospital, and they give you this form to be filled out.
The people of Montserrat today couldn't list many of the great names of Irish history, but there are...
My father was quite light-skinned. And in fact, my grandfather had blue eyes and straight hair. Because one of my uncles, my daughter and I had such a joke.
Because he's a white man, that's why he had blue eyes and straight hair. Because he's a white man, that's why he had blue eyes and straight hair. Ghetto, you're retarded. You just say stupid stuff, Ghetto. You should. I don't know why people think you're intelligent. I don't know why people think you're smart. I can't understand it. I can't put my hands around it. You're not a smart guy at all. You're very dumb. You think that you think that there were blonde, you think there were blue-eyed, straight-haired Irish people that were black. You're a dumb, Ghetto. Y'all say such foolishness. I get it, though. Y'all think y'all smart. I get it, though. I really do. Listen, man. If I was you, I would hate me too. God damn it. All right, so before we get back to this lovely lady, we're going to read a quick piece of this book. The Place of the Welsh in the History of Britain by Professor Boyd Dawkins, M.A. FRS, reprinted from the Manchester Examiner. Place of the Welsh in the History of Britain. It's an article from 1896, Harvard College Library. All right, let's do it. The questions, who are the Welsh and what is their place in the history of Britain, are of great interest in themselves and demand more than a passing notice at the time when it is attempted to raise an antagonism between the races inhabiting the British Isles. We're going to skip ahead. We're going to skip ahead a little bit. Cool. We're going to go right here to 2. The small, dark Welsh. The Welsh, as their name implies, are simply the inhabitants of Britain, strangers to the English invaders. It would be absurd to expect that the rude warriors who pushed the inhabitants of Roman Britain before them to the west into Wales, Cumbria, and West Wales, Devon and Cornwall, would have been drawn any subtle ethnological distinctions. To the destroyers of the Roman Empire, their foes in Britain were Brit Welsh, and in Gaul, Gaul Welsh, under which heads were included without any distinction the races which they conquered. It is clear, however, from the pages of Caesar and Tacitus that at the time of the Roman conquest, there were at least two distinct peoples in Britain. The tall, fair-haired, blue-eyed Celts, identical with the Gaelic tribes, and the dark-complexioned, wavy-haired Southern Welshmen. It is clear from the pages of Caesar and Tacitus that at the time of the Roman conquest, there were at least two distinct peoples in Britain: the tall, fair-haired, blue-eyed Celt, identical with the Gaelic tribe, and the dark-complexioned, wavy-haired South Welshmen, or the Silures, who are compared by Tacitus to the Iberi of Spain. So they look like they could have been from the Iberian Peninsula. They look like they could have been of Eber. They look like they could have been of Spain. They could have like they could have been Moorish. This comparison is now amply justified by a visit to most Welsh towns on a market day, say Denbigh or St. Asaph, where the small dark Welshman is to be seen identical in everything but dress and speech to the small dark Basque of the Western Pyrenees, both French and Spanish. I can do that too. I can do that, CT. I can do that, CT. You want a gun show, CT? We need not, however, go as far as the Pyrenees to find people identical with the small dark Welsh, the small dark Irish, the small dark Irish. Oh, yeah, probably. Did I? Oh, I'm bugging. Y'all couldn't even see what I was doing. I'm so sorry. Y'all got pardon me. I'm new at this. All right, so let's go back. Small dark Welsh, right? So we're reading small dark Welsh. It might actually be better if I just do this like this. That's cool. I'll just do it like this from right now. I already got it in here. Forgive me, I'm so silly. The Welsh, as the name implies, are simply the inhabitants of Britain, strangers to the English invaders. It would be absurd to expect that the rude warriors who pushed the inhabitants. There we go. That made more sense. It would be absurd to expect that the rude warriors who pushed the inhabitants of Roman Britain before them to the west into Wales, Cumbria, and West Wales would have drawn any subtle ethnological distinctions. Meaning, they're just the inhabitants. They're just coming to conquer. They don't care to do any just distinctions of all the different ethnic classes that were there. To the destroyers of the Roman Empire, their foes in Britain were Brit Welsh, and in Gaul, Gaul Welsh, under which heads were included without any distinction the races which they conquered. It is clear, however, from the pages of Caesar and Tacitus that at the time of the Roman conquest, there were at least two distinct peoples in Britain: the tall, fair-haired, blue-eyed Celts. Okay. Tall, fair-haired, blue-eyed Celts, identical with the Gaelic tribes, and the dark-complexioned, wavy-haired Southern Welshmen, or the Silures, who are compared by Tacitus to the Iberi of Spain. This comparison is now amply justified by a visit to most Welsh towns on a market day, say Denbigh or St. Asaph, where the small dark Welshman is to be seen identical in everything but dress and speech with the small dark Basque of the Western Pyrenees, both French and Spanish. We do not need, however, to go as far as the Pyrenees to find people identical with the small dark Welsh, the small dark Irish of the southwest of Ireland, the small dark Highlander of Scotland, the Scots, the Stuarts, who King James is a part of. King James King James the Stewart of Scotland, and the dark inhabitants of Devon and Cornwall are physically of the same race. The recent researches of Biddle prove also that the dark Yorkshire man and Derbyshire man are all of the same stock. Family, are you not small, dark Highlander of Scotland, small, dark Irish of Southwest Ireland, small, dark Basque, small, dark Welshman, both French and Spanish? These people are all the same people. Small, dark Yorkshire man, small, dark Derbyshire man. There is no longer room for doubt that the small, dark Welshman is a fragment of the people formerly widely extended over Europe, but now broken up into ethnological islands by subsequent invasions. On the continent, we find that this same race still in Britain, and so they're small, dark Brits, and in various districts in the valley of the Loire, and as is clearly proved by Dr. Braca's maps, until at last we come to the Basque of the Pyrenees and the small, dark population of Spain. There is no longer any room for doubt that the small, dark Welshman is a fragment of the people he formerly widely extended over Europe. You mean the Moors after they got kicked out? Okay. And further, the fact must be accepted that the language which they spoke is now represented by the Basque tongues, which has so long baffled the philologers and which is not only non-Aryan but pre-Aryan. It may be objected to this that hitherto we have sought in vain in Welsh for traces of Basque, and that Welsh is a purely Celtic tongue. Come on, man. The answer is, in fact, that the Ethiopian can change his language but not his skin. And that within the present century, Welsh as a language has perished in Cornwall, a part of the old West Wales, and now only survives in the dales of Cumbria in the tongue of shepherds counting their sheep. On the continent of Basque, tongue itself is only spoken in an isolated and small district and has disappeared from the valley of the Garonne by the dissolving influence of the time. To quote the happy phrase of Dr. Brucker, the language has gone without any corresponding or equivalent change in the people, the small, dark Basque, or Iberic race. Iberians, Eber, the ones who went to the other side, these Hebrews, as it may be called, is proved to be by an appeal to history to have been pushed steadily to the west by the invasion of the Celts and later of the Germanic tribes. In the days of Augustus, their domain in Gaul extended as far as north as the Loire and was bounded to the north in the east by the lands of the Celts, Celtica. When the Romans conquered Spain, they occupied the whole of the western parts, the Celts possessing the eastern, and the mixed people, the Celtiberians, the middle. The Celt and Iberian alike were pushed further to the west by the various Germanic tribes who poured into the Roman Empire, and in Britain ultimately found a refuge in Cornwall, Wales, Cumbria, and the Scotch Highlands, leaving, however, behind them sufficient numbers to be easily recognized in the present population of England. Family, are you not entertained? Come on. Y'all know how to hit me up to tell me I'm crazy and I'm wrong and none of this makes any sense, right? That's the IG. Or tap in with the email, his ghetto point of view at Gmail, his ghetto point of view at Gmail, his ghetto point of view at Gmail. Tell me how this is wrong. Again, the book we are reading from is The Place of the Welsh in the History of Britain. And it just talked about how there were dark-skinned Welsh, dark-skinned Irish, dark-skinned Celt Iberians, dark-skinned Spanish, and how when these people were taken over by other conquering tribes, they noticed there were two distinct peoples, tall, fair hair. They didn't say what their skin color was. I hope you paid attention to that. They said there was tall, fair-haired, blue-eyed people, and then the short Basque, the short Welsh, the short, the short dark skin. Excuse me. Who they said, and they said the Ethiopian can change his language, but not his skin tone. Whoa, whoa. Oh, but what is this? Because these are early Irish folk. Silly. That's what this has to do with Kamala and her people. Silly. These are early Irish folk. Oh, you conjecture it. You don't know what you're talking about. You y'all gotta stop at some point and just give it a rest. Just know y'all dealing with the best. Y'all are rocking with the best right now.
One of my uncles who died about 5 years ago in Ohio in the United States. When he was admitted to the hospital, I guess the nurses didn't want to ask him what his ethnic origin was. They just put him down as white, and we had such a joke.
We
when
had
he went into
such
the
a
hospital,
joke.
and they give you this form to be filled out.
When they asked you, did you
To ask him what his ethnic origin is, and straight here, because and I resemble them in the my grandfather and my father were quite light-skinned. And in fact, my grandfather had blue eyes and straight hair. Because one of my uncles, my daughter and I had such a joke. One of my uncles who died about 5 years ago in Ohio in the United States. When he was admitted to the hospital, I guess the nurses didn't want to ask him what his ethnic origin was. They just put him down as white, and we had such a joke when he went into the hospital, and they give you this form to be filled out.
The people of Montserrat
That's such
today
a
couldn't
joke.
list many of the great names of Irish history, but there are two they all know: Arthur Guinness and Oliver Cromwell. The name of Guinness is, of course, held in high esteem, while that of Cromwell is mentioned with almost the same dread as in Ireland.
Whew.
It was under the press gangy of Cromwell that hundreds of people from Cork.
Why would people in the West Indies speak of Oliver Cromwell's name with such fear? As we were talking about the invasion, the Cromwellian conquest. Let's get to it.
Kilkenny and Drogheda were expelled to the West Indies.
They were
They
expelled to
would
the
have
West
arrived
Indies.
just as the first importations of Africa.
One of my uncles who died about 5 years ago.
It just so happens that it happened at the same time
When
the
he was admitted
Africans
to the
got there,
hospital,
huh?
I guess
So
the
they got
nurses didn't want to
slaves
ask him
from.
what his ethnic origin was.
Man, this
They
is
just put him
crazy.
down as white, and we had such a joke
We
when he
had
went into the
such a
hospital, and
joke,
they
yeah.
give you this
Chuckle.
form to be filled out.
The people of
Let's go, man. The Cromwellian conquest of Ireland. First victims of the Cromwellian conquest of Ireland were soldiers, were Irish soldiers. The victory of the Parliamentarian Army, professional Irish soldiers. After the victory of the Parliamentarian Army, professional Irish soldiers were put into internment camps. 38,000 at least of them were sold into the armies of the nations not at war with England, such as Spain, Portugal, and Poland. So the English, or the Brits, the English were selling, Oliver Cromwell and his Parliamentarian Army sold all of these people to anyone who England was not at war with. Spain, who had stuff going on in America, Portugal, Poland. Not one you hear about all the time. From a strategic viewpoint, it was understandable that Cromwell wanted rid of the soldiers. Irish soldiers had a reputation internationally for being fierce fighters. Just like the Harlem Hellfighters. The soldiers were shipped off as soon as possible, and they were not allowed to bring their dependents. You mean their families were separated? Oh, I thought that didn't happen to nobody else, where their families were separated. They were not allowed to bring their dependents. So they had to go, but their children couldn't go. So they were separated. This meant there was now a huge population of women and children that were financially unsupported and destined to go hungry. The hunt for more slaves. Then Cromwell systemically made sure the next harvest was destroyed. He had organized that the army bring scythes. Houses, which in those days were mostly wooden and wattle and daub cabins, were burned. Many people were driven off the land and sought refuge in the towns. This strategy increased the number of destitute. Destitution was then used to justify rounding up the people to sell them into slavery. It was easy to target the homeless in towns. So-called manhunters went around settlements on horseback with long whips. This is what they doing to the Irish. They going around on horseback with long whips, hunting them, destroying their crops, making them go hungry to justify taking them into slavery. And that slavery was in America by the thousands, the tens of thousands, and the hundreds of thousands. Forcing people, men, women, and children into long holding pens outside the towns. They put them in long holding pens outside the town. This sounds familiar, don't it? From which they were marched to the major ports, Kinsale, Bantry, or Galway, which are all places now named in the islands. Come on, y'all. English slave ships picked them up at the ports. To sell the Irish as slaves was seen as natural by the English of the time. The prevailing attitude was that an Irish Catholic was less than human. Oh, you mean like how they say we 3/5 of them? Y'all don't see this? To kill them was a heroic act. Profiting from the Irish white slavery was seen almost as a humanitarian act. Y'all don't see this, huh? My goodness. My goodness. Y'all blind to this, huh? Most slaves were sent to Barbados today, which today is a holiday resort. Back then, it was an English sugar plantation that needed slave labor. Irish slaves were the answer. Irish slaves were the answer. Oh, hold on. I thought they would go to get oobity goobities. Nah. Irish slaves were the end. Oh, okay. Anyone who could be considered a vagrant. Oh, so they gave vagrant laws? You mean like the black codes? They did that to the Irish folks? In other words, homeless or an enemy of the new regime, such as the entire Catholic clergy. So they sent all the Catholics. And anyone who was young enough to be useful for slave labor was transported. It was estimated that transportation to Barbados was the fate of 50,000 Irish people between 1652 and 1656. I've seen estimates as high as 1 million. These people keep playing with these numbers. The practice had become so popular, one resident wrote that people had started to make a verb of it. To Barbados, you. Oh, they was going Barbados, you. Oh. I'd argue it would have to be way more than 50,000 people for it to be so common a term. They was going Barbados. We going Barbados, you, boy. We going Barbados, you. The Irish slaves were next in line to black slaves when it came to being exposed to cruel treatment. The Irish were considered rebellious. Plantation owners used extreme violence to ensure obedience. I thought this only happened to the Africans. So they were separated from their families. They were taken without having done anything wrong, or they were taken because they needed to serve out a prison sentence. If they were young and they were able to be useful on the plantation, they were taken as well, and they would be used extreme brutality and violence to ensure obedience because they were rebellious. Whew. This sounds so familiar. In Barbados today, there are still some descendants of the Irish that were captured and sold as slaves. Oh yeah. So they in Barbados and they in Montserrat, according to the video, and they in Jamaica. They all over the islands, family. They're called the Redlegs. Stop it. The Redlegs are the actual Caucasian folks. This is true. A poverty-stricken group of the population. Apparently, they owe their strange name to the sunburnt legs emerging from their kilts when stepping off the slave boats. Some Irish people were sold as slaves into tobacco plantations in Virginia. We read about that already. In both places, the treatment of the white slaves, no, don't get me wrong, there was some white slavery as well, but this is not, they didn't just take white folks into this slavery. They took black folks and white folks into this slavery, or dark-skinned people and tall, fair people into this slavery, because Irish slaves were much less docile than Africans. The treatment of the white slaves was even worse than that of the Africans. They were much less docile. Jesus, they were active. They were smart. They were ready to get it popping. But I thought the African slaves were doing the same. Y'all confusing me now. Irish slaves, the many rebellions in Barbados, beatings and torture of various kinds were commonplace, as well as unsafe and hazardous working and living conditions. None of the Irish sold into slavery by Cromwell ever returned to Ireland. So that means they're still in the islands now. Who are their descendants? At home, the slaves were forgotten until the publishing of an excellent book on the subject of Irish white slavery, which we have used as a resource to all the facts and figures quoted here. To Hell or Barbados by Sean O'Callaghan. Thank you very much, guys. Let's continue.
They couldn't list many of the
Oh, so
great
now y'all gonna
names
see
of Irish history.
it was the slave masters on the islands were dark skinned, Sephardims, Borrados, Conversos. Let's go.
But there are two they all know, Arthur Guinness and Oliver Cromwell. The name of Guinness is, of course, held in high esteem, while that of Cromwell is mentioned with almost the same dread as in Ireland. It was under the press ganging of Cromwell that hundreds of people from Cork, Kilkenny and Drogheda were expelled to the West Indies. They would have arrived just as the first importations of African slaves took place. So, both cruelly uprooted from their homes, Irish and African Negro shared a common suffering, a common grievance, and for the most part lived together in peace and common understanding. However, there is a record of one insurrection of black slaves against their Irish masters.
St. Patrick's Day was chosen because the Irish would have been celebrating that day. And the slaves thought that this was a good day to perhaps take them unawares. In the end, the plot was betrayed by slaves themselves, and this could stem from perhaps some love for the Irish masters, I don't know.
There have been some wild stories told about it, but it never amounted to anything much. They blamed some old woman, they called her Fanny Garby or something, because she is supposed to have let the cat out of the bag before it actually happened or something. Whether that's true or not, I really can't tell you. But
Do you think that the relationship between the slaves and the Irish settlers were better in Montserrat than they were, say,
Oh, you got to be kidding me. The last name Burke, guys, right here, Trey Burke. Dang, I was muted that whole time. Jesus Christmas. All right, let me go back real quick. I know what I was saying, gang, is I know you guys so badly want these people to be you want these slave masters, these white men to be the slave masters, but the article itself clearly stated that it was white slaves. Okay? So everybody who has a Irish name is not because they had a white slave master. We got to get out of that. So I'm reading this book now. And please again forgive me for the silence part. Whence the Black Irish of Jamaica. Whence the Black Irish of Jamaica. By Joseph J. Williams, PhD. All right. And this, as again, it shows you a typical Black Irish Jamaican. A typical Black Irish Jamaican. Look at that. Look at that. A typical Black Irish Jamaican. That man right there. Look at that brother. Smooth looking brother right there. Let's go to the introduction. Visitors to Jamaica and the British West Indies frequently remark a seeming anomaly in the even remotest sections of the quote-unquote bush and among the darkest of the Negroes who clearly trace their ancestry back to the earliest slaves from Africa. They will find distinctively Irish names so common that in an unguarded moment, they are apt to give flight to the imagination and claim they have encountered a touch of the brogue, a touch of the Irish. A few years ago, in one school in Kingston, Jamaica. Oh. So far we've talked about Montserrat, we talked about Barbados, and now we talk about Irish in Jamaica. Oh. Where do you think the name Irie comes from? Ireland. Everything Irie, everything crisp. A few years ago, in one school in Kingston, you might be found Burke. And again, we just looked at Trey Burke from the Knicks, right? This is when he was on the Knicks. I think he's still on there anymore. But anyway, Collins, Mackey, McDermott, McKeon, and Walsh. And with one exception, the last named, I guess, Walsh, who was a dusky brown. Walsh seems like that's a flip of Welsh. And we spoke about the Welsh already. But I'm not even sure if y'all heard it. So I'll go back to it if I need to. Let me go back to that real fast. The Place of the Welsh in the History of Britain by Professor Boyd Dawkins, M.A. Right? So we get over here to this part about the small, dark Welsh. Small, dark Welsh. The Welsh, as their name implies, are simply the inhabitants of Britain, strangers to the English invaders. It would be absurd to expect that the rude warriors, the English invaders, who pushed the inhabitants of the Roman Britain before them to the west into Wales, Cumbria, and Western Wales would have drawn any subtle ethnological distinctions. The two to the destroyers, the Roman Empire, their foes in Great Britain were Brit Welsh, and in Gaul they were Gaul Welsh, under which heads were included without any distinction the races which they conquered. It is clear, however, from the pages of Caesar and Tacitus that at the time of the Roman conquest, there were at least two distinct peoples in Britain: the tall, fair-haired, blue-eyed Celts, identical with the Gallic tribe, and the dark-complexioned, wavy-haired South Welshmen, the Silures, who are compared by Tacitus to the Iberi, the Ibers of Spain. This comparison is now amply justified by a visit to most Welsh towns on a market day. And I'm saying Walsh is a derivative of Welsh. That's why I just want to read this again, make sure we got it, because, I also saw that it was some silence. So I just want to make sure this is in there. Say Denby or St. Asaph, where the small dark Welshman is to be seen identical in everything but dress and speech with the small dark Basque of the Western Pyrenees. Both French and Spanish Western Pyrenees small dark Basque resemble the small dark Welshman. We need not go as far as the Pyrenees to find people identical with the small dark Welsh. the small dark Irish of the southwest Ireland, the small dark Highlander of Scotland, and the small dark and the dark inhabitants of Devon and Cornwall are physically of the same race. The recent researches of Beddoe proves also that the dark Yorkshire man and Derbyshire man are of the same small dark stock. On the continent, we find the same race still in Britain, and in various districts in the Valley of the Loire, as is clearly proved by Dr. Braca's maps, until at least we come to the Basque of the Pyrenees and the small dark population of Spain. There is no longer room for any doubt that the small dark Welshman is a fragment of the people formerly widely extended over Europe after they got kicked out of Spain. After the Battle of Granada, after losing to the House of Castile and Aragon, by subsequent invasions. Mic drop. All right, let's not play with it. Boy, let's get paid with it. Let's don't play with it, all right? So we are continuing on. Perhaps one of the most frequently met with throughout the island is that of Burke. Let's see if I can. How did I do that previously? Oh, this is just a book. I can just. This is just. No, that doesn't. Give me these. Oh, okay. Okay. Perhaps one of the names most frequently met throughout the island was that of Burke. In some few instances, it is true that the name itself may be a corruption of the Haitian refugees du Bol, who came to Jamaica in the 18th century at the time of the Haitian uprising. Mic drop. The usual explanation given for the presence of Irish names is, of course, that these slaves of former days were generally called by the family name of the master. But in the case of Burke, at least, we do not find a single planter of that name among the early records of Jamaica, meaning there were no slave masters by the name Burke on the island of Jamaica. Certainly, the survey of the year 1670 shows that at some point, not 1 acre of land was owned by anyone named Burke. And the same may be said in the case of most of the other Irish names we encounter today among the Negroes of the island. So how did they get these Irish names if there were no slave masters there? The purpose then of the present writer is to find a solution to the riddle. Whence the Black Irish of Jamaica? Where did these people come from? And the answer, briefly summarized, lends itself to a threefold division. From Ireland through Barbados to Jamaica. Come on, guys. I wonder who also went to Virginia first before they went to Jamaica. Because it was 2 groups, as they called. Remember, 2 groups came. Y'all playing games with history, boy. From Ireland through Barbados to Jamaica. Let's go. We're not going to play with it. Whence the Black Irish of Jamaica? Let me zoom out a little bit so I can get great. From Ireland. Chapter 1, from Ireland. Mary Gaunt, writing about Jamaica in 1922 in her chapter on the white bondsman, states, to this boiling pot, Cromwell sent 1,000 Irish men and 1,000 Irish women. I can find nothing but you see how low they put this number? In the previous article we were reading, it was 30,000 just soldiers alone sent. And then 50,000 overall. Like, guys, 50,000 other people were sent and 30,000 soldiers were sent first. They don't want you to know how many they actually sent. They sent hundreds of thousands, if not millions. I can find nothing but the bare notification that they arrived, and it hardly seems to me that those 2,000 Irish can have helped matters much. whether they were poor convicts or political prisoners. In 1756, Dr. Brown was most emphatic in his statement. Cromwell, having had early intelligence of this conquest, Jamaica, resolved to miss no opportunity of supporting this new acquisition, which now indeed served him as another Siberia. Drops. The island. Oh, I'm so sorry. Hold on. And Edward Long, the historian, who was the Speaker of the Jamaica House of Assembly in 1768, when writing a few years later, only expressed the commonly accepted opinion in. Excuse me. Oh, went too many pages. I'm sorry. What? Oh, sorry. In the island, when he recorded that the Council of the State in England voted that 1,000 girls and as many young men should be lifted in Ireland and sent over to assist in peopling the colony. On May 11, 1655, Jamaica formally capitulated to the representatives of Cromwell, the Lord Protector of England, and as early as the following July 18th, so literally that July, we find a document signed by the field officers of the army in Jamaica entitled Several Considerations to be humbly represented to His Highness, the Lord Protector and Council concerning the armies in America, wherein after bespeaking necessary equipment and supplies, the request is made. The servants from Scotland or elsewhere may be sent to assist in planting, etc. The servants from Scotland may be sent to assist for planting. Where? In Jamaica, for which the officers out of their pay will make such allowance as His Highness shall think fit and assign them such proportions of land, and His Highness shall direct the expirations of their respective terms. There is in the library at Boston College, Newton, Massachusetts, an updated manuscript, presumably in the handwriting of Oliver Cromwell, entitled Certain Queries Concerning His Highness Interested in the West Indies. The last two paragraphs, I'm sorry, I'm all over the place. The last two paragraphs read as follows. Whether His Highness interest in the West Indies can be carried on without the settling of some course for the constant supplying with people, whether the weeding the commonwealth of vagabonds, condemned persons, and such are useless and hurtful in war and peace, and a settled course taken for the transporting them to the Indies, the West Indies. Yeah. And thereby principally supplying Jamaica. It is not necessary to be consulted. It may have been in consequence of this memorandum that a letter was dispatched in the name of the Protector to his son Henry, who was Major General in command of the forces of Ireland. While the communication itself is no longer available, its purport is disclosed by the answer to Secretary Thurlow, which is dated September 11, 1655. So I received yours of the 4th instant, and give you many thanks for your relation of Jamaica. And though we have met with some more ordinary cross providence in this undertaking, yet I doubt not but the Lord will smile upon it in the issue. I have endeavored to make what improvement I could in the short time allotting me tuitionage in furnishing you with a recruit of men and a supply of young Irish girls. In order to it, I have advised with chief officers near me, not having opportunity to give for the better enabling your lordship and Council of Ireland to have proceeded in that business, but I have been prevented therein by my bodily indisposition, and therefore By this can only desire your lordship to proceed as far as you can. Two more particular advices can be sent. To this comes the assurance under the date of October 9th, 1655. As for the girls, you may be confident to have what you desire in short time. You can expect. So 1,000 boys and 1,000 girls from Ireland being sent to Jamaica to help populate a colony. That didn't happen. That didn't happen. Y'all gotta stop. Y'all gotta stop. I know it didn't happen because y'all say it didn't happen. Because y'all say it didn't happen. Because y'all are. but they were white Irish. Y'all don't even know what y'all talking about no more. Y'all don't even know what you're talking about at this point anymore. You're just saying things. Let's jump ahead real quick in this book. Let's jump ahead a little bit. And I know I'm going to have to, at one point, read the whole book to you guys. I get it. But let's get to the to Jamaica part. In concluding our chapter on the Irish of Barbados, we had occasion to refer in passing to the Buccaneers. It is interesting then to find Agnes M. Whitson opening her forward to the constitutional development of Jamaica with the observation: the conquest of Jamaica was the first of the great buccaneering expeditions. That means pirates. Anybody that's seen Pirates of the Caribbean knows what she's referring to. In the time of peace between England and Spain, Cromwell secretly prepared a naval and military force and sent it out to gain an interest in the part of the West Indies in the possession of the Spaniard. From the original manuscript in the Boston College Library, we find Admiral Penn reporting from Barbados under the date of March 17, 1655, in connection with the land forces, our new levies. Look at this. Collins, O'Hare, McCormick, Kennedy, Collins, Walsh, McKeon, McDermott, Burke, Mackey, Burke. That's definitely a Burke right there. That's a Burke right there. You can see that. Oh, that's definitely his ancestor right there. That is 100% this man's ancestor. Guys, we gonna leave it right there because y'all go play with me today. And I ain't got time to play with you fools today. I have no time to play with you fools today. Our new levies, people, even in their undoing and prejudiced many of the rich, some losing 10 servants, some 15, some more, some less, none escaping us. After the disastrous...
Hi, Dad.
Hey, big boy. After the disastrous repulse at San Domingo in April 1655, the expedition turned next to Jamaica, which was in no position to make even a feeble resistance. Ecclesiastical records for 1649 show that Santiago de la Vega, the only town of importance on the island, numbered less than 500 quote-unquote Spanish citizens. Oh, this is getting into it, guys.
It is.
This is very, very. We go pause right there because this is definitely gonna have to be part 3, 4, and 5. But listen, gang, y'all know where to reach me. If I don't know what I'm talking about, none of these sources make any sense to you, pull up. Let me know. His ghetto point of view at Gmail. Y'all see the IG right here. Kamala no Black. Part 2. We out of here, gang. Part 3 will be soon. Peace and love.
Peace and love.